So, with no further ado, let's kick off in Australia. Our first speaker is Gary Bertwistle. He's based in Sydney. He's a world renowned speaker and expert in new ways of thinking. Here's Gary.
Hey everybody at Interconnect, thank you for having me as part of your event today. Special thanks to Richard Chase and Simon Arrowsmith. It takes a lot of work putting one of these events together, so thank you guys for inviting me to be part of your day. This is a topic that I'm actually acutely interested in, shaping the future. How does one go about doing that? And I think these sorts of events are terribly important because it gives you a chance to stop down from the doing part of your day to be a person who can think about and create the future. And this is something that Preetha G, who is said to be one of the great modern day philosophers, female philosophers, said to me. I asked her, where do you see the biggest opportunity for business leaders or individuals today? And she said, Gary, we're spending too much time in a state of doing. We're not spending enough time in a state of being. We're doing strategy, but we're not being great strategists. We're doing leadership, but we're not being great leaders. We could even be doing great relationships. Instead of doing them, we're actually being in a great relationship. And this is one thing I find really powerful about these sorts of days where you can sit and think, and not just the doing part, but think about being a great dreamer, being a great creator who can create and shape the future for you and or the organization. And when you think about people who are shaping the future, you have to be able to see it before you can shape it. And one of the commonalities of people who are shaping the future is they can see a future, they can imagine a future which does not yet exist. What can you imagine in the future for your industry, your category, yourself, your family? You see, we don't take enough time to sit and dream anymore. There was a time when that was a part of our day we'd sit and be bored and to dream. But today, no sooner do you have 60 seconds to yourself than we jump on a device and we are distracted. The people who are going to shape the future are the ones that take the time to disconnect at events like this and dream. You've actually got a choice when you get up from your chair today. Do you want to be a Netflix or their competitors? Now, back in the mid 1990s, Reed Hastings, who started Netflix, was still sending out DVDs in the mail. But he heard about this thing called the internet. And he started to invest because he said, if that gets into the home and we can get all that entertainment in our home, suddenly I'm redundant. And he started to invest because he could see a future which did not yet exist. Now, I don't know how old you guys are. Maybe some of you remember Blockbuster. So where are they now? Dinosaurs. Because they were so worried about charging you for late fees and or selling popcorn off their front counter. Nobody was taking the time to think about what might the future look like. So you've got a choice. Do you want to be a Netflix or do you want to be a Blockbuster? Because each of us should be running two businesses at once. The one we have today and the one we're going to become. But what's sad is how few are leaders I can sit with and or individuals who can tell me what their world would look like in 3, 5, 10 years time. Few leaders. Most are caught up now and today in just doing the business we have today. Few leaders can tell me the business they're going to become. Tim Cook is the CEO of Apple, and he was asked this question. He said, if you could zoom out and then look back and to say, what was Apple's greatest contribution to mankind? He said it would be around one word, health. And it's funny because when you talk to a lot of people who have an Apple Watch, if you look at the one commonality, the thing that they use their phone the most for, it's health. And so we should be running two businesses, the one we have and the one we're going to become. And taking the time to sit and imagine your industry, your category, your life, to say, what do you, not what you think you can do, what do you want in 3, 5, or 10 years' time? This is Rose Lucario, who led Patagonia. She just recently resigned. And she has got a dream for the company for 100 years into the future. She said, we're safe for 100 years. But she said, going through this pandemic, the people who helped her create and reimagine her future, reimagine her industry, should be the ones to lead it. And she stepped down. You see, business is a changing, evolving world. If you haven't read the Simon Sinek book called The Infinite Game, get a pen and paper and write that down, because it is a cracking book. And it's almost like the guy wrote it for the pandemic. And what he talked about is that today in business, we think business is a finite game. Now, a finite game means there are set rules, set players, a set outcome, there's a winner and there's a loser. But you see, business is not like that. Business has changing rules. Just ask the government. Changing players, staff come and go, competitors come and go. The environment, the world changes. And that's what Simon Sinek talks about as being the infinite game. You see, during this time of the pandemic, I heard a lot of people say we need to bounce back. So we were here in 2020, the early part of 2020. And a lot of companies, all of us, has gone backwards in one way or another. And people say we've got to bounce back. But bouncing back means you're bouncing back to where you were. That's a finite game. What Simon Sinek talked about is it's an infinite game that 10, 20, 30 years, your company's going to go on for a long time. That's the infinite game. The rules, the environment, the play, everything's going to change. So when you think about, for example, people like Elon Musk, who's just put the first publicly funded people onto the International Space Station. He was frustrated when the pandemic hit because it stopped him from doing what he wants to do, because he's got such a long game in mind. But for him, it's not bouncing back to where it was. That's just a blip in the radar. Because getting on the International Space Station is just here. But he knows he's got all these steps to get to the infinite game. But few leaders take the time. And that's what it is. It's the time, the imagination, the creative inputs, like these events, to think about this long game of the infinite game. Bouncing back just means you're going back to where you were, but that's a finite game. So we need to change our thinking with how this works in our own world. And if you're a sports person, you might have heard the name Wayne Gretzky. Now, he was a famous ice hockey player in Canada. And he was always famous for saying he was one of the best ever, if not the best ever. And he talked about he wasn't going to where the puck was. He would always skate to where the puck was going to. So my question is where's your category going to? Where is your company going to? And if you're not doing it for yourself as a leader, what you've got to think about is the impact this is having on your people. Now, Gallup do a worldwide engagement score each year. And over the last couple of years, they break it down into, in any company globally, 24% of your team were engaged, which means they buy into the purpose, they buy into the dream, they love the company, love their work, they're on board. 60% of people came to work, did their job, went home, it was a means to an end, fine. 16% didn't want to be in your company, didn't want to go to work, didn't like the place, and wanted everybody else to know they didn't like the place. They were the actively disengaged, the cancerous people. What's really scary is that it used to be 76% of people were either going to work and going through the motions or didn't want to be there. That's now raised to 80%. Where it was 24% of people were engaged, now it's only 20%. In my mind, why is that? Because I think that people are craving to know what the infinite game is. They want to know what the dream is for the future. But instead, we work on metrics of time of bouncing back to get revenues back to where they were, to get our market share back to where it was. But see, the only people who care about that are the shareholders. But the people who work in the company mostly, They want a bigger picture. They want to know what the future looks like and where do they fit into that future. If you want to understand how this works and start to get a hold on it, read a book by Marcus Buckingham called The Nine, as in the number nine, Lies of Work. And the premise of that book is when you're creating a culture, the culture is not made up of a bunch of people, it's made up of a bunch of teams. And each team should have its own beliefs and a way of doing things. And when those teams all coalesce around one thing, then you get a culture. And you'll find this online quite easily. There are 8 questions that he says, use these 8 questions to understand how well your teams are operating and working together. One of those 8 questions is, if you ask your team, and he says score 1 to 5, I would say use 1 to 10. But say to a team member, on a score of 1 to 10, would you agree with, I have great confidence in my company's future? Now, once you get a number over 3 staff members, 100 or 1,000, then you get a pulse. Then you actually understand whether people actually are excited about the future of the company, or is it just the next 6 months? Is it the next 12 months of numbers? I would then go so far as to say, ask those people, what can you see in the future? Because if you are all not coalescing around the one thing, then you don't have traction. You're missing an opportunity. But it takes leadership. Someone's got to sit down to see the future before you shape the future. The other piece that goes with this is why do you do what you do? Now, John F. Kennedy walked into NASA in the United States of America and saw a man mopping the floor and said, what do you do here? And he said, I'm helping put a man on the moon, Mr. President. That was his why. It wasn't specifically what he was doing. It was why what was he contributing to? I would say the other bit that's missing of why people aren't as engaged as they could be, which is about shaping the future, is we don't know what that North Star is. We're not taking the time to sit as a leader and think. We're too busy doing stuff and not being a great strategist, not being a great leader, not being a great creator. And we're not sure why we're doing what we're doing. In 2005, I read a book called No Excuses, and it was written by this guy. His name is Carl Maynard. Now, he was born as a congenital amputee. He had no arms below his elbows on both arms and no legs below his knees. Imagine that. Yet he became a champion wrestler at state level in America. He opened a CrossFit gym and he climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, one of the biggest mountains in the world. It's an extraordinary story from an extraordinary guy, and he's such a top bloke. And I was talking to Carl and I said, going up Kilimanjaro, there must have been times where it got hard. What was the default voice in your mind? He said, there was one time we were part of the way up the mountain, we'd been going for a few days. He said, Gary, I was broken. He said, I was in my tent at nighttime and I honestly didn't think I could go on. And he said, then I thought about why am I doing this? And he was carrying the ashes of a private in the US Army, a guy named Corey Johnson. He was carrying the ashes on behalf of Corey's mum because Corey got killed by an IED in Afghanistan. And Kyle promised his mum that he would carry the ashes to the top of Kilimanjaro. He said, the next morning I woke up and I climbed harder and faster than I had in the previous days because he suddenly knew why am I doing this? And the thing for me is that once you know what that North Star is, you know what the vision is out here. The why is the juice in here that keeps you going. Because you're going to hit those bad days. You're going to hit the days where you just don't want to do it, you don't think and go on. But if you can put, as Simon Sinek would call it, a just cause. The military, first responders call it a mission. In business, sometimes we call it a purpose. But what you want to do is have a compelling one that your team can all coalesce around and feel good about, be inspired by. Find that thing, create a mantra, and then hammer the living crap out of it through the organization over and over and over and over. So it becomes part of the DNA of the organization. And that's really important because the why helps you on the climb. When I was talking to Kyle, he said he got to a point where he could see the summit of Kilimanjaro. And he said, I just didn't know if I could finish it off. And there's time constraints, like you've got to hit it by a certain, there's a window of time where a climber has to hit the top. He said, I could see the summit. I just wasn't sure that I could make it. And yet he said, although I could see the summit, I wasn't sure if I could do it, but I knew I could do the next 3 feet. That's all I concentrated on was the next 3 feet. And once he did those 3 feet, he did the next 3 feet until he got to the top and delivered the ashes of Corey Johnson. And the thing for me is that you can have those lofty dreams and you can have the why, but you've got to do the work. You've got to do your job. And if you might have such a lofty dream, like an Elon Musk, way beyond his own lifetime, you may have a lofty why of helping mankind find a new, you can have those lofty things, but you start with the smallest possible piece each single day. The why drives you. The North Star is the vision, shaping the future. But it's those little things you do each single day, just 3 feet. Get that 3 feet done, then do the next one. And there's an example of how powerful mission is in a company where I interviewed a guy called Evan Hafer, who's the CEO, former Green Beret in America. And he started a company in only 2015 with 2 guys called Black Rifle Coffee Company. When I spoke to Evan in October, they were a $50 million company. By Christmas, they were an $80 million company. If you look online now, they're said to be worth between $100 and $500 million. That's less than a year, putting through 1 million tons of coffee each year. I said, Evan, why is your company so focused? He said, we are all about our mission, inside the business and outside the business. Our focus on the mission inward and outward. All the messages outside the business through the socials, their marketing, their promotion, their recruitment, all their messages, every single podcast, every single video is about their mission. Premium coffee and culture for people who love America. And their target audience is first responders, the military, Coast Guard, paramedics. Premium coffee, great culture for people who love America. So the thing is, you can take that mission and you can use it to attract the best people to your organization. And in fact, if you look at even people like Patagonia, with what Rose Macario has created, their mission, here it is on a wall, we're in the business to save our home planet. That drives the business. All their marketing, their culture, it drives everything. And by having that each day, it helps you to get to that North Star or to shape your future. One of the things we don't do today is to take the time to sit and think. And Cal Newport wrote a fantastic book, put it on your reading list, called Deep Work. Deep work is where you sit for an extended period of time with something which challenges you mentally, cognitively challenges you. So something is hard, you got to think about it, but you stay with it for a long time. That's deep work. When I spoke to Cal about his book, he said, focus is the new IQ. The leader who can sit and focus on one thing and stay there for a long time and ponder that point, either on a walk, in a chair with a cup of coffee, sitting on a bus, but pick one thing and focus. And you need to do that if you are to shape the future, because you've got to create it in your own mind and think about what it could look like. And the science behind it is your brain needs silence to allow all the ideas, the associations, the ponderings, all the things that you learn today from Interconnect. You need silence then to allow your brain to do its best work to map all those things together to give you an idea. Silence and stillness are my currency, which is what Ben Kingsley, who won the Academy Award for Gandhi, said. Stillness and silence are my currency. We're too busy doing, we're not being. And I think the majority of high performers, thought leaders, people who are shaping the future, it's a mandatory non-negotiable to find somewhere in their day that they can sit in silence and ponder and think. Bill Gates goes away to a cabin in the woods. It's well known. You'll find it online. I think he does it twice a year. And all he takes is a stack of books, no digital devices. He just goes to the cabin in the woods. And it's a bit like the cobra, the snake. Every so often, the cobra gets really uncomfortable. It has to withdraw and it goes away into hibernation. And during that time, it gets really uncomfortable and it sheds its skin and its vision goes blurred. Then after a moment, after time, it comes back into society again. But when it comes back stronger. And I think that's a great analogy for those that are shaping the future, is to pull yourself away from where you are, blur your vision. So you're not caught up with what is, you're more thinking about what could be. Bill Gates takes books and writings to feed creative outputs, needs creative inputs. Get uncomfortable. You don't have to know, but spend some time in that space doing deep work. And I think this version of the Cobra and or Bill Gates going to a cabin is a process you can put into your day to help you get there. The other thing that can help you if you want to shape the future is to see what's going on around you and really watch. Look and see and listen to people, but hear what they're saying. Because too often we're too busy going from meeting to meeting, email to email, text to X, social to social. We're not really seeing what's going on. And we're not really listening to people. We're sitting there listening, but we're not hearing what they're saying. All the gold is in those conversations. All the gold is around us. Now, the military have a saying called the OODA loop, OODA, looped around. And this was created by a guy called John Boyd, who was a 20th century jet fighter pilot. He was known as the 40-second Boyd because he would do this in the cockpit of his plane in 40 seconds. I love it because I think if you're going to shape the future, your creative outputs like that need creative inputs, which is all about the observations. So the first O in OODA loop is the observation. What are you seeing around you? Events like this are so valuable because you hear from a variety of experts who are all giving you input, but you've got to be open to it. You've got to be observing, seeing what's going on, and really looking and hearing and really listening to what's going on to take all that in. So you're observing it all. That's the first O. The second O is, well, what does all that mean? You've got to orient around what does that all mean? It's funny because I heard someone say that here, then I saw that, and on the news last night, I wonder whether there's something in this. So you're picking up all this observation, a bit like Sherlock Holmes. See and observe, not just seeing. That's the first O. Then you orient around, what does this all mean? I'm hearing this a lot now. Those girls Interconnect, I heard 3 people about the same thing. I wonder how. The D in OODA loop, observe, orient, the D is around make a decision. So I've seen all these things, heard it all. I'm starting to get a sense of what this could mean. How can it influence us? What might it look like in the future? Then you're going to make a decision. Smallest decision, 3 feet. The last part of the OODA loop is the A. What are you going to do about it? What's the action you will take? Observe, orient, make a decision, take action. Now, John Boyd would do it in 40 seconds. He's playing his cockpit, doing like this. You can do it over a period of time, having your journal and recording ideas, observations, that you can then think, what does that mean to me? What am I going to do about it? What's the first step? The OODA loop is a powerful tool that I speak to a lot of young marketers and brand people and leaders of the future to say, there are some systems and processes you can make as part of your day. Do what you want to do. I'm going to wrap up now, but as an Australian with an audience, I know there are some people from South Africa, there are people from the United Kingdom, there are some Kiwis on the line. Rugby is one of those universal languages for a lot of countries. And I interviewed a guy called James Kerr. Now, if you're a rugby fan and you haven't read James's book called Legacy, do yourself a favor. It's a cracker. If you love sport, do yourself a favor. If you just love business strategy, you're looking to build a culture based on what we discussed earlier on, get the book Legacy, James Kerr. It's about the All Blacks, the rugby team of New Zealand. What's their mission? Inspire the country of New Zealand. It's not about winning games. It's about inspiring the country of New Zealand. All these things feed into each other. That's the process. Don't worry about the outcome. Worry about the process. The All Blacks have an 80% winning record over 100 years. This guy here, Richie McCaw, was the captain. He's got an 83% record as a winning record in international rugby. It's extraordinary. When Richie was a kid, he sat with his granddad, and his granddad said, "So you want to be an All Black?" He went, "Yep." He said, "No, you don't." He said, "No, granddad, I want to be an All Black." He said, "No, you don't." He said, "No, I do." He said, "No, you don't want to be an All Black. You want to be a great All Black." And he used to write GAB, Great All Black, on his band on his wrist before every game. And he was sitting at training in Christchurch. It was raining and it was windy. It was muddy. It was howling outside. And he didn't want to train. He'd say, "What would a great All Black do?" He'd train. Let's go. Don't write a strategy. Write a great strategy. Don't go to the team tomorrow and be a leader. Be a great leader. If you're fortunate enough to have kids, be a great parent. It's incumbent upon us to raise our standards, shape the future dream, take the time to sit in deep work and think about it. Look around, use the OODA loop. Spend time with your journal, pondering and thinking. Withdraw 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day if you can to think seriously about yourself, your own world, what you want. Think about your mission, your just cause, your purpose. Why? Because it gets you through this period. Don't bounce back. That's just a blip on the radar. You've got much better pictures in mind of how you can make an influence on the planet, people around you, society, charity, the environment, business. That's the infinite game. And the leader, the great leader, can see that. And when times get tough, they fall back to why am I doing this? What is the big picture? What am I seeing and observing? How do I use that? And I hope from my little bit, you've got something that helps you develop a great strategy as a great leader and being a great contributor to society. I've talked a bit today about the interviews I've done. I'm on the Mojo Radio Show. It's a show I host on all the normal platforms. I hope you'll check it out. There's some wonderful guests on there that really share some wonderful tools you could use to shape your future. If you would like a copy of the notes from today's presentation, I'll put them at garybertwistle.com/interconnect. The password will be Mojo1. You'll be able to download all the slides that I've shown and find out more about me and the Mojo Radio Show. I would love to stay in touch with you. My email is gary@garybertwistle.com. Please keep in touch. I'd love to hear from you after this event. Once again, thank you to Richard Chase and to Simon Arrowsmith for putting together a cracking event. It takes a lot of time and effort, but they're two guys that have got a firm mission in mind. So thank you for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully I'll hear from you soon.